Alright guys, welcome to this episode of Head-to-Head Battles. In today's episode, we're going to be covering the top 10 budget techs that you may not have known about, alright? So it's my job to let you know. So before we get started, as always, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment. Hit that notification bell to join the notification squad, and follow us on Twitch. We stream every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7:30 p.m. EST. Be there or be a light fixture, okay? And as always guys, if this video gets 500 likes in 5 days, we'll be giving away a booster box of the most recent set. So let's make it happen, all right? Now, to preface this video, we do need to mention one thing, right? These cards are expensive for a reason, right? They basically do something that no other card can do by itself. So instead of calling these budget alternatives, we do need to start calling them budget techs instead, because when we're saying it's a alternative, we're saying it's easily swappable, but in most cases, that is generally not the case. So I hope these techs that I'm mentioning today will turn on a little light switch above your head and help you out in your next deck building process and hopefully get you some more W's, all right? Let's roll the intro. So I kind of want to give an example of what a expensive card is, right? Like Infinite Impermanence is a $35 card. It was originally $18 when Dual Overload first came out, and people were just cracking that box open left and right. And now, unfortunately, Infinite Impermanence is right back up to $35. And not everyone can play 3 ofs, because generally speaking, for 3 cards, you're spending $100 plus. And for a lot of players, $100 is pretty much all they have to spend on all 40 cards plus a 15 extra, right? So what can we do? Psyframe Gamma is a really good card, and it's a card that you can use on both turns, just like Infinite Impermanence, okay? On top of that, Gamma negates and destroys. So it's actually a really good card, and Toon Chaos overprinted the crap out of it, which means Gamma now is a $2, maybe even a $1 card at the time of recording. There's literally no reason for you not to have multiple playsets. The card is just very free, right? So basically all you have to do is summon out the Gamma and then summon the driver from deck, and you negate and destroy. And then they get banished at the end phase. Gamma is a really good resource that I feel like you should be playing in most decks that allow you to play. Now I'm gonna be mentioning 2 more cards that kind of like emulate Infinite Impermanence, but I feel like Gamma is, in my opinion, the strongest out of the 3, okay? So the next card that kind of emulates Infinite Impermanence and is a tech choice is Effect Veiler. Now, I know Effect Veiler has always been the budget alternative to Infinite Impermanence, but as I mentioned before, I feel like Effect Veiler is more of a tech card, right? And Effect Veiler you can only use on your opponent's main phase, which makes it really difficult if you generally don't use it, and or if you draw it off the top, right? Like it's kind of useless going second. You want to let it resolve on your opponent's turn. There are many situations where that generally may not happen. As you know, Effect Veiler has a lot of different prints, and it is a very cheap card and a really good budget tech to, you know, play in most decks that need a extra light body. Talking to you, Shadows. Talking to you. And finally, a really good tech that can easily replace Infinite Impermanence in a deck is Forbidden Chalice, okay? Forbidden Chalice is a quick play spell card that basically gives a monster 400 attack but negates its effect. So obviously, you're only using it for its negate effect and not for the attack boost, you know? The only downside is that you can't interrupt your opponent on his turn, but it's always a free bait card going second, right? Like, if they have a Borreload Savage or a Herald on field, and you have a Forbidden Chalice, like that is the freest bait that you can put out there, right? If you're targeting the Appaloosa, they'll definitely negate it with the Herald or Borreload Savage, and you only have like 1 or 2 negates to go before you slap down other tech cards that you'll need to stay to see what. Yeah. So comment down below. Out of those 3 that I just mentioned, which one do you think is the most powerful and why? Because it's always good to kind of like get the ideas of other players, because everybody's playstyle is different, and getting that like wisdom from someone else can really help you improve upon your own game, all right? And as I mentioned before, you need to understand, right, that these cards that we're talking about today are tech choices, which means, again, they will never ever fully replace the full effects of the card that you're teching them in for, right? And guys, you need to understand what a tech choice means, right? So what is a tech choice? A tech choice is basically something that kind of gets the job done, but not as well as the card that you're replacing. So I want you to keep that in mind as we roll through the rest of this video, all right? The next tech I want to talk about is actually Kaiju. Now, Kaijus have always been that one card in the format that can always out the problem monster, right? Well, I mean, there is one thing you can't Kaiju that I know of, that I play a lot of, and that's Eater of Millions. Cause Grenmaju best deck, okay? Comment if you agree or disagree, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, there's never a hand going second where you seeing a Kaiju in your hand feels bad. Like, when you see the Kaiju in your hand, you're like, okay, I got this, right? Cause like, when you're playing against Rots and they have like Savage, Herald, and Appaloosa, like you just straight up bait out the Herald or the Savage with Forbidden Chalice, and then you Kaiju the other one, and then you just slap down, interrupt the Kaiju Slumber. What are they gonna do? What are you gonna do? Appaloosa can't negate spell cards, and you already lost the Herald and or the Savage. Like, what are you doing? And guys, as you know, in today's game of Yu-Gi-Oh, where power creep is a serious problem, there will always be some untargetable, omnipotent, omni-negating, indestructible, unkillable monster that doesn't have the words cannot be tributed. So make sure you guys buy your Kaijus, because Kaijus actually went down in price a lot. Even Radiant got another reprint in the Sacred Beast structure deck, which means all your Kaijus are pretty cheap. And on top of that, if you have invested in Dual Devastator, you have 3 copies of Gamma Seal. Oh, I meant like a playset of Dual Devastator, right? Because you need 3 of everything. You have 3 Gamma Seals, which, can we stop abusing the turtle, please? Okay, there are other Kaijus out there that you can abuse. There's Dogaran, there's Godarla, there's Humongous. Don't ask me why I know these offhand, it's because I have a binder full of Kaijus. Like, you can never have enough of those. And on top of that, as I mentioned before, if you need a tech to replace Lightning Storm per se, let me show you what Interrupted Kaiju Slumber does, okay? It basically does what Lightning Storm does, like half of what Lightning Storm does, but it replaces the other half with the special summon of Kaijus. Now, if you have Interrupted Kaiju Slumber in your graveyard, you can banish it to add a Kaiju to hand to help you out in the grind game, which, you know, generally speaking, if you're running Kaijus, you're generally not playing for the grind game, but there are some instances, okay? And guys, as you know, in today's meta, we are playing a break my board type of meta, or haha, you can't play type of meta. But Kaijus definitely give you an edge in today's meta as a tech choice in most decks, right? Like, again, playing 3 Gamma Seals doesn't hurt consistency at all. Because if you even see one, you're gonna thank the Kaiju gods for it being in your hand, right? Because, again, if you can't get past the Appaloosa, how are you really playing the game? Correct? Now, speaking of Lightning Storm, that is a very expensive card, okay? Now, there are a lot of budget tech options for Lightning Storm. One of them being Dark Hole. Did you know Dark Hole used to be at 1 and now it's back at 3? A lot of people really don't expect it, and you should maybe grab a few copies or even look in your bulk. Like, I'm sure you have 3 Dark Holes lying around somewhere, right? And on top of that, you have cards like Raigeki, which are technically still at 1, but it's still very powerful, and it's a one of, right? If you see it, you see it. If you don't, you don't. And that's Yu-Gi-Oh in a nutshell. Now, we can't talk about board wipes without talking about my friend Pac, okay? Pac is a good friend of mine, and he enjoys playing Shadow and Torrential Tribute. I've lost to Torrential Tribute so many times because you just never expect it. You're like, what is that set card? Probably Shadow Core, or like something whack like El Shaddai Fusion, and then he flips over Torrential Tribute, and you're like, okay, no, okay, no, it works, no. Torrential Tribute has some expensive copies, but there are a lot of cheap copies that you can pick up. Like, even the ultra rares are like, I think only $2, so there's really no reason for you not to have a couple playsets of this card. Now, when you're talking about techs are only good in some decks, right? Like, Torrential Tribute isn't good in every deck. The only reason it would be good in something like a deck like Shaddolls is because when the Shaddolls go from field to graveyard, you get all of their graveyard effects, which means like you plus infinite when you clear the entire playing field. Like, you're not even like just clearing the board and like everyone starts at 0. Like, he's at 0, you're at 10. So 10, okay? Can you call it an unfair card? No, but it's definitely very strong, all right? And if you thought, hey, I can't get Torrential Tribute in my opening hand, well, why don't you play 3 copies of Fury of the Kairyu Shin? It will literally search you Torrential Tribute. Now, on to the draw cards, because drawing in this game means everything, okay? Now, we have cards like Pot of Extravagance, and Pot of Extravagance, and Pot of Extravagance that are extravagantly priced, right? But there are a lot of budget tech choices that you can play. Pot of Desires is the first one that comes to mind. Now, I know people say, oh my god, Pot of Desires, neg 9, are you dumb? Why are you playing this card? It's a good card. Pot of Desires will literally make an unplayable hand playable, right? Like, let's say you're playing Salamangreats, right? No one ever ran Pot of Desires and Salamangreats, and all of a sudden, it became like an absolute, you must play this card or lose type of deal, right? Why? Because people need to understand the advantages of drawing 2 cards, right? When you draw 2 cards, you can fix bad hands and make good hands even better by giving you more choices and more lines of play. And that equals consistency. And then when a deck is consistent, the deck is good. Because if you can consistently bring out your win condition, then the chances of you losing reduce exponentially, okay? Another really good tech that helps you draw cards, and now this one, I'll be honest with you, doesn't fit in every deck, is Performapal Pop-Up, okay? This card says that you can send 3 cards from your hand to draw 3 cards from your deck, but you take 1,000 life points of damage for every card in your hand. So if you're going first, you're taking 5,000 damage. Now you're saying, why are we even talking about this card? Well, it's a good card, right? In a deck like Zombies per se, Performapal Pop-Up, that is a tongue twister. Pop-Up will help you get your zombies in your hand to your grave, because most zombie cards and every other archetype that plays in the graveyard sees advantages when it's in the graveyard. So in decks like this, Pop-Up is a really good tech that you can run to give you an advantage while at the same time fixing your hand, right? Because there are a lot of hands where you want to have the cards in graveyard, but also have 1 or 2 other cards in your hand. And in those instances, Pop-Up is a really good tech that you can be running. And Pop-Up is like a really cheap rare, I believe, in LED 6, Legendary Duelist, Magical Heroes, Magical Heroes. All right, next up we have the good old Ball and Chain, Old Faithful, Ye Who I Want to See in My Hand, back in the day. This SuperPoly, brother. I'm talking about SuperPoly. It's SuperPoly. Now, SuperPoly is really cheap because, again, Dual Devastator. Dual Devastator actually did wonders for the Yu-Gi-Oh community. Anyway, SuperPoly is a really good card. It's not as meta-defining as it was a couple months ago, but it's still very good. Again, when you're playing techs, you're playing them in certain decks, right? That's why techs and decks, they rhyme. Tech deck. Remember, it's tech deck, dudes. Anyway, so a card like SuperPoly is really good in decks like, again, Shaddolls. The advantage SuperPoly gives to a deck like Shaddolls is actually very immense, right? And there are a lot of decks that can run SuperPoly like Zombies. Actually, a lot of rogue decks can run a lot of these techs and succeed. Maybe it's not like top 10 budget techs, but like, is this another rogue video? Are we doing another? That's what it feels like. And like I said, SuperPoly is not as good as it was back then, but I believe we're coming into a new meta with the release of Infernomals and Dragma, where SuperPoly will actually come in really handy. And if you don't have the Dual Devastator copies or, your max rarity copies, go grab them for cheap, because they're really cheap right now, like disgustingly cheap. Like, who remembers when a common SuperPoly was like $10? Crazy. Now, I'm going to tell you my favorite tech of all time because it will literally make your opponent not play their turn, okay? It's called Dimensional Shifter. Dimension Shifter? DShifter. It's called DShifter. Every cool tech needs a cool name. It's called DShifter, okay? So, you're asking me, what does DShifter do? I've never heard of it before. Well, let me tell you what DShifter does. So, the card reads, if you have no cards in your graveyard, quick effect. You can send this card from your hand to the graveyard until the end of the next turn. Any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. So, this means any deck that requires their graveyard to play to bring monsters in and out the combo can't play. So essentially speaking, DShifter will literally stop rocks, okay? It will literally stop like any Shadow deck or just any deck that uses the graveyard as a second deck, which is like a thing. It's like a thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! Today. You have your main deck, you have your side deck, you have your extra deck, you have your graveyard deck, and you have your banished deck. I know, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! In a nutshell, And the good thing about DShifter is it can be used in a lot of OTK decks, because I truly believe DShifter is becoming one of the better hand traps, or even one of the best hand traps, because it is such a blowout card, right? And if you are playing an OTK deck, Grand Magi, best deck, after your opponent passes, after setting a monster in defense mode, you literally just hit him with the power of 1,000 suns, 10,000 suns, because With the celebratory 10,000th card, now we can say the power of 10,000 suns. And finally, Ghost Ogre. Okay, let's talk about Ghost Ogre and why it's becoming such a budget tech in the upcoming meta, okay? Now, Pendulums, not very successful against Ghost Ogre. And on top of that, Numerons, the Numeron field spell, Numeron network, won't resolve if you Ogre the field spell. And the reason being is, field spells need to be on field to resolve. So even though Ghost Ogre doesn't say destroy and negate, and it just says destroy, from a field spell perspective, if you destroy the field spell, they can't dump the calling. And if they can't dump the calling, they can't summon Zexal, which is a problem card. Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a love or hate thing. So as you know, guys, Ghost Ogre has been reprinted in Duel Devastator, and it's very cheap. It's like $2.50. So $7.50 for a playset. And if you don't have it, you really need to pick it up because people will be buying it out in sets, correct? So in Yu-Gi-Oh, if a card is being bought at the threes, they're gonna be off market very quickly. And if you can't get to it, people will relist the Ghost Ogres at $5 and they're making $2.50 and you're out of $5 instead of $2.50. So take Seuss's advice. Go grab some Ghost Ogres now. All right, guys, as always, thank you for watching this video. I know some of these videos get really long, but I hope that the information really does help you. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comment section down below what budget text you use in your decks, because I want to know, because if you can help me, I can help other people. See how that works? So as always, guys, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment. Hit that notification bell to join the notification squad. And we stream on Twitch every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7:30 p.m. EST. And as always, if this video gets 500 likes in 5 days, we'll be giving away a booster box of the most recent set. So at the time of this video, it would probably be Battles Legend Armageddon, all right? So guys, we have really big things planned for you guys in the future. Huge collabs with great content creators in the space. And I promise to make this channel something that everyone here who has been here can be super proud of. I freaking love you guys. Let's keep up the good vibes and the high energy. This is Susu from Head to Head Battles, signing out.